What's up, and welcome into the DePaul Hoops podcast right here on the Big East Energy Network. He's the great Andy Thompson. I'm Nick Palazzolo, and we have a lot to get to, a lot of basketball to break down. We will recap on the men's side, the Seton Hall win, the Providence loss. We will preview the upcoming road games against Creighton and Marquette, and we will also talk about the women's victory over Xavier and probably some other stuff that I just didn't list right now. Whatever. Anyways, all of that and more. It's coming up next.
Look to his shot.
Spins, fade away. Yes, sirree! Chandler hits the three.
Oh, tough shot. Giving it up to Reed.
Well, Andy, I think you could not have had a more polar opposite week than the DePaul men's basketball team, because on Wednesday nights you have just an incredible win in Newark, and then Saturday's game just felt like a swift kick in the nuts. I mean, I don't know where else. But where do you want to start? Let's start with Seton Hall. Where do you want to start with that victory over the Pirates?
First, I want to do is I want to acknowledge that the kick in the nuts was not swift. It was drawn out over the final 20 or so minutes of the game, because those past few
This
minutes.
is true.
But those final few minutes just took it. There was nothing swift about that kick in the nuts. Anyway, let's talk about let's talk about first what
every missed free throw.
Every missed free throw just made
was a kick in the nuts. But
well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, let's talk about Wednesday in Newark. DePaul 69, Seton Hall 57, behind what I think. I mean, Nick, you can tell me if you disagree with this, but I think this might have been the best individual performance of the Chris Holtmann era, because you earned a legitimate Q1 victory that, the two previous ones you've gotten under Chris Holtmann, the road Georgetown win last year and the road Wichita State win this year, both of them became Q2 the following day because they were kind of teetering in that 70-75 range. Seton Hall's 53rd minute this morning, and they were 49th when you played them. So that's a team that's going to stay in Q1. So DePaul earned its first real Quadrant 1 victory under Chris Holtmann, and its first Quadrant 1 victory at all since I believe they beat AP number 8 Xavier in January of 2023. So, DePaul hasn't gotten a victory like that in a while, and for it to be one where, you were down at the half and it kind of looked like one of those games where, DePaul was going to struggle offensively and then they were going to, give up a big run in the second half. They didn't do that. In fact, they were the ones that went on that run themselves. Like they were, in that first half, they shot it all right. But then in that second half, they shot it of a cannon, outscored Seton Hall 36-22. You made exactly 50% of your two-pointers, which I thought was going to be key, because Seton Hall, obviously, if you want to, beat them, you got to be aggressive and draw a lot of fouls in their guys. Najai Hines played a good amount, which I wasn't sure, how much of a swing that was going to have. But, he had 6 points, 5 boards, and, he was reasonably effective. I think he had 2 blocks in there as well. But, you were able to, command a team that has been able to, really drag a lot of teams down and drag them into the mud. You were able to kind of get yourselves out of it and just had, I thought, a really good offensive performance in the second half. You got a lot of alley-oops. NJ continued to tear. He was on. He had 21 points and 8 boards to have the first back-to-back 20-point performances by a DePaul forward since Paul Reed back in, I believe, 2019. Correct me if I'm wrong on the year. But, I mean, yeah, it was a special performance, and there were a lot of different things to take away. But I think one of the biggest things for me was that NJ Benson kind of continues to string along performances where, he kind of establishes himself as the guy that we all thought in the offseason he could grow into, where now he's had – back-to-back games scoring 20 points, and the efficiency was really good. He was 18 of 20 in his combined 2 games at Seton Hall, and the one before, which is escaping me. God, we have so many games to talk about. I can't remember the game that was a week ago. I'm losing it. But NJ's has been having some really good games, and the Seton Hall game was just the most recent example of just how far I think he's come from the beginning of the year and kind of his confidence.
What was the game before? Creighton was the game. Because then they were off the previous weekend. That's why. Yeah, I don't have a lot in terms of Seton Hall. Like I think it was. Yeah, it's fine. I think it's relatively simple. DePaul just had the will to win, and Seton Hall didn't. And Seton Hall especially needed that game just in terms of a potential NCAA tournament bid. Big East seeding, right? Still a lot of things can happen in the final 2 weeks of the season as we kind of count the days until everybody gathers in Times Square, at the Garden. But like, I didn't really have a lot from the Seton Hall game. DePaul was just the better team. They kind of what was most impressive to me was that middle stretch of the game where they had 6 of 8 offensive possessions were turnovers. That was the end of the first half, but also the first couple possessions of the second half. And then they had that challenge, and that challenge might have been the reason. And I know Holtmann was like, we didn't really talk about a lot during the extended delay, but I think it just kind of gave the guys an extended timeout that you don't usually get. It gave them a real chance to reset because over the challenge was like with like 17:50 on the clock in the second half remaining, and DePaul outscored Seton Hall 35-8. Oh Jesus, excuse me. DePaul outscored Seton Hall 35-18 after winning the challenge. And I think like we can make a little bit out of it, we can make a lot out of it. But like that timeout really just kind of proved that they just needed a reset, because I think at times, and I think especially on Saturday against Providence, they were just playing way too fast. And I think like that was part of the problem. But just to talk about NJ, I mean, NJ in his last 3 games is averaging 21 points and 9.3 rebounds, and he's shooting 86.2%. He's 25 of 29 from the field in his last 3 games. Like, that's just insane. Like, you are getting, after that Providence game on the road, where Holtmann pretty much called out NJ, that sucked. Like, his effort was horrible, like his worst game ever. And the last 3 times out, like NJ has been really incredible. But what was really concerning to me, and I haven't completed my rewatch, but this is just from what I remember of the Providence game. NJ didn't really touch the ball in crunch time against the Friars. And Andy, I don't know if there's anything you want to get to on Seton Hall before we move on to Providence, as I just kind of blew right through a stop sign there.
You ran a red light. Let's be more
I
clear.
think like NJ Benson, I think by far. Hopefully there wasn't a camera. But I think NJ Benson is your best player on the floor right now. So everything has to run through him. Regardless of the skill sets of other guys, you're at the point in the season where you're just riding the hot hand. And I think that's because the way the makeup of this DePaul team is, they don't have a dude. Like, it kind of changes week to week, game to game, of who that guy is who's just going to turn it on. And right now it's NJ. So I think you just kind of have to ride the hot hand. And that's what made him so effective Wednesday in South Orange.
For sure. There are 2 more things I kind of want to quickly touch on with the Seton Hall game, because you're right. Like, it's crazy that we're sitting here and ignoring what's probably the best win of the Chris Holtmann era, but I would agree. Like, DePaul handed Seton Hall their first Quadrant 3 loss of a season, so they pretty much have to win out to shore up. Unless they win the Big East tournament, they pretty much have to win out to shore up their hopes of being in the NCAA tournament. So the Big East is going to be a 3-bid league, despite, for the first time in a long time, every team being top 100 in KenPom. Let's see if they can finish out that way. It hasn't happened in 6 seasons. But 2 things I want to talk about. I agree that the timeout, well, the quote-unquote timeout that came from the challenge that Chris Holtmann got to, I believe his record is now 9-2 in challenges. I believe you track that, but just it is an impressive stat for him to have used 8-2. Okay, I thought it might have been 9-2, but my apologies. But that was certainly a big swing in the game where DePaul kind of got a chance to, like you said, reset and figure out how they were gonna attack the remaining portion of the game. I thought the big swing for me, when Teo comes in after kind of having a bit of a shooting slump his past 4 or 5 games, hitting those back-to-back threes. I think that for me was when I saw those 2 shots go in, I was like,
vroom.
DePaul's got a real chance here, because when you're able to get some offense from somebody who hasn't given you, just because he's gotten the right looks, and Holtmann said that about the team in the Providence game. We'll get to that as well in a little bit here. We're going to have to. But when you've got a guy who gets the right looks on a game-to-game basis, isn't always able to hit them. When he drains 2 of those back-to-back, it changes how Seton Hall has to defend you, because they have to send somebody else to help on him, which leaves a guy like NJ even more open inside to do his damage. Or even in the limited minutes he played, Fabian, got 2 points, got 2 boards, and only had 1 foul in that game. Like he did some stuff inside. And when you've got Teo outside drawing other defenders, it makes it easier for your front court guys like NJ to be able to get more work done inside. I thought that was a big swing. Nick, the other thing I want to kind of talk about, and we'll segue this into Providence now. Seton Hall shot 4 of 10 from 3 in this game. So not they didn't shoot a lot of them, but they shot them accurately, 4 of 10. DePaul, I think, is fortunate in this one to gotten the win on the road, and Seton Hall backed up that game by going 0 of 18 against Georgetown and somehow winning that game. You can hear about both sides of that game on Bleeding Blue and Gray and Pirate Vibes, because I am not sure how either of them are going to discuss that game with any level of sense, because that was a nonsensical game to watch. So Seton Hall goes 4 of 10 against DePaul, 0 of 18 against Georgetown. They're not a very good 3-point shooting team. But DePaul got lucky in that game where, Seton Hall drilled their first, I believe, 3 3-point attempts, and you were thinking, okay, it's going to be one of those kinds of nights. Seton Hall is bottom 5 in the country in 3-point attempt rate. They're not taking a lot of threes. And DePaul is lucky they don't take a lot of threes, because if they took more than 10 of them, you might have gotten burned. And now let's talk about Providence here, but I'm going to tee you up like this. In DePaul's last 6 games, they are shooting themselves 26.5% from 3 on about 22 attempts a game. Meanwhile, their opponents, are you ready for this? In their last 6 games, are shooting 42.3% from 3 on 18.5 attempts a game. I'm not an expert at math, even though I use stats a lot. I'm not
that good.
But when you're allowing your opponents to shoot about 40%, to shoot greater than 40% from 3 over a 6-game span, that isn't a 1-game isolation. Like one of my favorite analysts, Matthew Winnick, always talks about, if a team shoots like below 15% or above 50% in a game, it's a shooting variance game. You throw it out. But when it's over an extended period of time, you can't throw it out, because at what point does it just become that's where the team is? I think if you ask me my number one concern heading into Creighton, heading into Marquette, these road venues where, Creighton shoots well at home. Marquette's gotten better at shooting from a 3. They were shooting about 30% when they came to Wintrust. Now they're, I think, in the mid-30s, so they've gotten better themselves, more accurate. When you're going up against 2 teams who, Creighton lives and dies by it, and we'll talk about that, and Marquette's gotten certainly more proficient from there. The 2 games we have coming up, my number one concern is going to be 3-point defense, because DePaul has shown over enough of a sample size that it's not a 1-game isolated thing. Like, this is an ongoing concern that I think has just been – we kind of were able to move past it in the Georgetown and Xavier games at home, because they obviously they won those games, and Marquette in the second half kind of came back down to earth at Wintrust. But you're seeing it enough now where DePaul just isn't – as good as the 2-point defense is, still top 30, you're not able to defend with 3. That's, I think, my biggest concern, and that's ultimately one of the main reasons you lost Providence. But as you can get into now, it wasn't alone, but I just thought that was – I had to bring that up first.
Yeah, and I think that was the most concerning thing ahead of the Providence game, because I crunched the numbers after the Seton Hall game, and they were about the same. So, like, when you told me those numbers, factoring in the Providence game, that didn't surprise me. And like, let's talk about the defensive numbers, the defensive 3-point percentage first, and then we could get to the offense, because that'll parlay into another thought I have. But in terms of defense, I think it's that a lot of it is transition through. I think some of it's transition threes, where they're just not matching up. But the other thing, their closeouts about the last 10 days have been god awful. And again, they have had some opponents, some high quality caliber 3-point shooters just make some and bury some tough shots. So again, I think it's kind of a combination of a lot. Right. And I think it's just a culmination of a lot of things, right? But if you're not closing out, it makes those shots just a little bit easier. And when you just continually give up more and more just chances, again, because I think teams are starting to figure it out. I understand it's last couple weeks of the season here, but teams are starting to figure out that if you get the ball in the paint, it's really not going to go anywhere with the way DePaul's defense is really set up. But it's on the perimeter where that is where they're really being English susceptible on the perimeter.
Kim English?
And shut up. Shut up. And these are concerns you and I talked about, heading into the Northwestern game, right after Buffalo, the second week of the season, because we didn't really know how it was going to play out perimeter defense. And then for the most part, it was pretty on par. It was very average. It wasn't anything great. But as of late, it's really started to hurt the Blue Demons. But offensively too, and here's the thing, everybody I understand has a hot take. We live in a first take, hot take, my take, your take type of society. And everybody, they see, bad things happen, like a bad loss, like Providence, where you didn't make free throws, you didn't rebound the basketball. Everybody wants the coach fired. I get that irrational take as much as it is irrational. I understand why people have that frustration. But here's what I will say. And this has kind of been a theme of the season. This isn't anything new. But the coaches are obviously getting guys into the right spot. Because the amount of and Andy, tell me if I'm wrong, but Holtmann has honestly been pretty impressed with the shot quality the last couple weeks with his team. He's been impressed with the quality of the looks that they're getting, but they're not going in. So why aren't they going in? It's not the coach. He's not shooting the basketball. At some point, I think it just becomes a situation of this DePaul team is simply not good enough offensively. And it's something we've kind of talked about in and around the last couple weeks out, but they just don't have the guys right now. They just don't have the dudes to hit perimeter shots. And that's why the missed wide open looks from three get magnified even more, because they haven't been able to really bail themselves out of it. So it looks a lot worse than it actually is. And the numbers tell you it is really bad. But at some point, I'm kind of sick and tired of the narrative. Well, this is the same old DePaul, it's the coaching staff. These are high quality looks. I don't know what more than you want. The players are just not executing and putting the ball in the basket, which is how you score.
Yeah, I don't think you or either are necessarily breaking news. And I think the other thing too is the rebounding battle hurt you. You got 15 offensive rebounds, and yet, you weren't able to convert on a lot of them, obviously, because you shot, they were 19 of 39 from three. But when half of your shots are offensive rebounds, most of those become free throws. You got fouled in quite a bit of them. Obviously, if you're not going to make your free throws, you're not going to be able to win games. And it was really funny that today, not even 24 hours later, we'll get to the women in a second here. I'm not trying to segue into that because we got a lot more to talk about Providence. But, DePaul, it was a relatively close game for them here, and they shot 14-16. The women did today against Xavier. And Pizzotti said in the press conference, and I just thought it was, to hear after yesterday, I just thought it was great. She said, close games come down to free throws. A lot of them do. She was talking about her team. The women have struggled from the free throw line all year. They shot 88% tonight against Xavier in their win. And so for her to say that in a game tonight after what happened to the men last night, it just kind of reemphasizes the importance of free throws down the stretch. And it's what you said. Just what you said just now is absolutely correct. The coaches are setting the players up to be able to hit the quality shots. But at a certain point, you've got to look in the mirror and say, and, the coaching staff, obviously, when they put this collection of players together, I'm not sure they necessarily envision something like this. But at a certain point, you've just got to look at the roster you've got and just figure out, okay, who do we want to have the ball in their hands? And when you can't necessarily figure that out in the moment, then you're just going to kind of have to ride with what happens, because you're setting them up, like you said, to get good looks. And if they're not able to, connect on those, that's something that it all comes down to, the work you put in with your form and everything and how much individual work you get in. But I just think, I'm kind of rambling on here because there's only so much you can say. When Holtmann gets the team set up to take the right shots, they're not going in. You were 626 from three, but how many of those, 7 threes that Layden took and those 9 threes that CJ took, and by the way, they were combined 2 of 16 from three. How many of those threes would you agree? Because I had great views of all of them from the baseline. How many of them? No, it's not good, but I'm not here to talk about that. But how many of those threes would you agree? And I had good views of them from both baseline shooting. How many of them were open? Like, it isn't like even CJ was taking a bunch of those quick shot ones.
I'd argue 12 or 13 of them were open.
Yeah, no, like 12 or 13 of them were as in rhythm as you could be. They weren't like, CJ wasn't doing his usual. I mean, he might have one like this, but I'm not going to fault him for one of them because I understand in the moment doing one of them in the second half. He didn't have a bunch of attempts where they were like, 5 seconds into the shot clock. Like, the shot that was created with about 5-6 seconds to go on the shot clock after a good ball movement where the ball touched the paint, the ball got out of the paint, it was kicked out, swung around to him. The shots he was taking were late into the shot clock. They were in rhythm. Like, at a certain point, if they're not going to fall, you're going to have to live with it because again, the coaching staff can set them up, but you're right. You can't make the players make the shots. You can just set them up to do it. And when the shots you're setting them up for don't go in, that is that's kind of going to be how the offense flows. But I do want to go back to one thing you said because I did, obviously you haven't completed that part of your rewatch yet. Sorry to kind of pull back the curtain. But I agree that I don't remember in the last 3 minutes of the game really Benson touching the ball much at all. And I thought in a night where he gave you, 19 points and 10 rebounds to give you his 4th double-double of the year, also 2 steals. I was kind of surprised he didn't get the ball more because obviously his free throw shooting has been a concern for DePaul all year. But, let's go through the percentages now individually. I'm not going to call guys out. I'm not doing that. I'm not in the business of saying anything like that. But I'm just going to go by the numbers to tell you why it couldn't have been any worse than NJ having the ball. NJ 5 of 8, Brandon 5 of 8, Blocker 0 of 4, Gunn 2 of 2, Fabian 0 of 2. So other than, Gunn making 2 of 2 on his attempts, Benson 5 of 8 was tied with your best percentage of the night. So I understand he isn't a great free throw shooter, but when nobody else is making them, he's got the hot hand that night. At some point, I'm kind of shocked he didn't get the ball at all down the stretch, to be honest. Like, he might have had one attempt late, but, he was about as physical as he'd been his entire career against Oswin, who just had a monster night again for Providence. He had, 12 boards, I believe he had 1 block. He had, 4 points as well. Just like Oswin had a great night for Providence defensively. And for Benson to be as physical as he's been against Oswin, where his averages against Oswin going into the game were 7.5 points, 3.5 boards. So he had a really great night against Oswin, and for him to not get the ball at all down the stretch, even try to foul Oswin out, because Oswin had 4 fouls to finish the game. I just kind of thought it would have been nice for NJ to get the ball down the stretch. I was kind of shocked he didn't.
Well, and especially because, and maybe there's a couple possessions that I just haven't got to. I got to about the under 4 media timeout in the second half of my rewatch. If you're watching this and want to know my thoughts from the rewatch, you can go to my Twitter at Palazzolo5. They'll be there by the time this podcast drops. But what's interesting to me is when your offense is going so bad, and let's just be honest, like that is it hasn't been a great year for DePaul offensive basketball. Your best player is NJ Benson. I have more confidence in NJ Benson going up for a contested layup or a dunk than I do anybody at the free throw line. Because and I'm looking at it, and this was heading into the game. It's a section in DePaul's game notes. Free throw percentage in the final 5 minutes in overtime. DePaul obviously hasn't played an overtime game, so it's just the final 5 minutes of the game. Who do you think? It's not. We'll take Nate Casher out of it because he's 2 for 2. So the next person has attempts. It's Caleb Banks, 83%. Can you name the next 2 guys in terms of free throw percentage in the final 5 minutes of games? They have 16 and 12.
I'm going to guess. This is a guess. I want to be clear. I haven't looked at this. I do read the game notes, but I haven't internalized this part of it like the way I do with some stats. I'm going to guess. Give me Macklin Benson.
It is RJ Smith and it is Cruz McClure. RJ's 13 of 16. Cruz is 9 of 12. Then you have Blocker coming into yesterday, and this percentage kind of tanked. But he was 71.4% in the final 5 minutes. NJ Benson, 66.7%. Brandon Macklin, 66.7%. CJ Gunn, 55%. And then you just got the bench guys, Teo as 1 of 2, Fabian's 1 of 6. In crunch time, this team is not a good free throw shooting team. I understand, I think Blocker is a good free throw shooter. Again, he missed the 2, the 1 to tie, and then the one to potentially win. But what I will say is, like, he had just a horrible night. Like, he just didn't have it tonight. When you like, I don't know if we've ever seen Layden Blocker in his 2 years here have as bad of a night as he had um against Providence at home. Like, 1 of 11. I thought defensively for the most part he was fine, but
Yeah, 4 steals.
offensively, like, you cannot get one of 11. Like, again, doesn't matter what you do on the defensive end if you can't score. And CJ, I thought, again, is fine. CJ Gunn is what CJ Gunn is. He's gonna have the shot where you basically say, "Oh shit, why is he shooting that?" And then it's gonna go in, but then you're gonna have the same reaction, and then it's not gonna go in, and then you're gonna get mad, and then you're gonna look at it with hindsight. But, like, as of right now, the last couple weeks, NJ Benson's your best player. Like, play through NJ Benson. Like, honestly, free throw shooting be damned. Like, go play through your best player. And, like, I thought it was interesting, especially at the start of the Providence game. They were trying to draw. The last couple weeks they've had an emphasis on taking their guards into the paint to try to open up some perimeter shots. And they have a lot of combo guards, not exactly perimeter threat guards, who can slash inside and create layups. Brandon Macklin's one. But, like, and I think you would agree with me here. Providence is just a bad matchup body for body with DePaul. Like, it's just one of those matchups where it's a bad matchup. But the problem is, it's a bad matchup. They outplayed you in this game, and you still had a chance to win. Like, you still had a chance to win the game. And I think that's got to be the most frustrating thing, because this was a game you very easily should have stolen, but you didn't.
I mean, you're exactly right. You forced Providence into a season high 18 turnovers. You took 16 more shots than they did as a result of those turnovers. You only committed 15 fouls. Providence committed 19. You were never in any major foul trouble. Obviously, down the stretch, each team had committed about 9 or 10 fouls in the second half, so that's negligible. But you were never in any real foul trouble, save for RJ Smith, who that's the kind of thing I want to talk about. Is I don't think RJ necessarily having 3 fouls early into the second half. I think RJ actually had one of his better games of late. He had 10 points, 4 of 8 from the floor, 2 of 4 from 3. He was one of the few guys who was efficient besides NJ last night. But it goes back to
he just had foul trouble that really caught you late. That's where RJ. That's where the one thing with RJ too, and I don't mean to steal your thunder, but, like, that's part of the reason, like, he couldn't really get into a rhythm. Like, he still put up a good number line in the box score, but he couldn't get into any kind of a rhythm because he had to keep, taking a seat because they were trying to manage his fouls. But I digress.
Yeah, and that's kind of been a recurring theme for him. Like in the Villanova game, he also finished with 4 fouls that night. And, there's kind of been, 2 games where DePaul's been right there at the end. And both of them have come down to, you were fine on free throws with Villanova. I think you're right around 80% there, a more normal number. But, Villanova kept making some really tough threes, and you just didn't have the personnel to be able to defend them the way you wanted to, because you couldn't run the right lineups that you wanted to down the stretch. And, RJ, I don't believe played much down the stretch in this game because he was managing that foul trouble. And same with, Blocker at 4 as well. Like, your key guys never got into a rhythm, whether it was offensively or on the defensive end with some fouls. And, once again, not to the extent of the Villanova road game, which for those who don't remember, it was a 5-point loss that DePaul took on New Year's Eve. It wasn't to the extent of that game, but just, again, you weren't able to run the exact lineups you wanted to, where, like you said, RJ is one of your best free throw shooters, which I'm now learning for the first time, down the stretch of games. And so I think when you're not able to run with him as one of your key offensive options because you're worried about if he gets his next foul, he's out, he's not going to be able to draw the kind of contact that he likes to be able to get those late game opportunities because he just isn't able to play to his full strengths. The other thing that I kind of wanted to mention was, obviously you can talk about the free throw shooting. You can talk about the turnovers Providence had. You can talk about the, the 3-point defense. But the other thing that I think I touched on briefly is just the rebounding in this game. I thought, like you said, Providence, not a great matchup for DePaul because so many of their guys are so physical. Oswin is probably, Zuby's going to be gone after this year. Terrace Reed's going to be gone after this year. Who knows if Oswin's going to stay at Providence, because I think everybody sees the writing on the wall in Rhode Island, and Steve Napolillo is going to have a decision to make that nobody envies in college basketball. But if Oswin sticks around in Providence, he's going to be the best returning center in the Big East because NJ will be gone, Terrace will be gone, Zuby will be gone. He is going to develop under the right coach into a great junior. And Kim English has done a fine job with him, but Oswin is a physical presence for them. Jalen Sellers, I think you and I both said this, is one of the most built players I've seen in my life at 6'5". He is a force to be reckoned with. He's physical. Stefan Vox is a relatively built shooter, about 6'7". Ryan Mila has some moments. Jason Edwards is just super shifty. He's one of the few guys I've ever seen blow by Layden Blocker with where it was effortless. Like usually,
that was incredible.
Like usually guys have to work to blow by Layden because Layden's very fast himself, but Jason Edwards just got around him at will, and that's no fault of Layden's. Like Jason's just that fast. Like Layden was, for as much as the offense wasn't going right for Layden was defending fine. Just he wasn't able to stay in front of him because Jason's just that fast. Jameer Jones is going to develop into, I think, a really good sophomore. He showed some flashes last night. And then Cole Hargrove and Piteris Pinnis are both also very physical, backup centers they have behind Oswin. Like when you've got a really, really physical team, for as good as NJ's been responding to physicality and for as much as Macklin's a driver, and that's the other thing too, is I think Macklin, he missed those two, layups at the end, but I think the thing with Macklin, I'm not going to fault him. He played 37 minutes last night and he was getting knocked around, at about 3 minutes to go in the second half, he got knocked over by Edwards and he didn't get up for a minute. Like, he drew 7 fouls last night, did go 5-8 at the line, got 7 rebounds, 14 points, 3 assists. Like Brandon was just tired at the end of that game. You could see it. And so when he's going up for those layups, not getting the contact he wants, he was just having to go through so much contact to finish on every single drive. Yeah, he was 4 of 12, but I'm not going to point to that as one of the reasons that you didn't close out the game because he was doing everything he could to will the team to that win. And like you said in the post game, you can stew on it, or you can, move into the next game. But I think going back to the rebounding, like Providence is such a physical team top to bottom that, like you said, it's a bad matchup for DePaul. And I think the rebounds are one of the things you're going to look back on, besides the free throws and the three-point defense, as what really killed you in this game.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it kind of at nauseum. But, like, again, you can point to one thing. You could point to blockers' free throws. You can point to, some ill-advised threes. But at the end of the day, there were plays to be made, and the players did not make the plays. Players win games, players lose games. Coaching wins games, coaches lose games. Like, it happens. Like, this was just a game where nobody made a play down the stretch, and when they had the opportunity, it just didn't happen. Like, it's really as simple as that. Like, we don't have to overcomplicate it. We don't need to take to social media and harass players for missing free throws. I think that is beyond asinine. Because at the end of the day, how many opportunities in the second half did they have for just open shots, and they just flat out missed? Like, they had several. How many times did they have the opportunity to grab a rebound and they just didn't? Like, this game was essentially lost at the free throw line and on the glass. Like, you don't need to overcomplicate it more than that. Like, DePaul's offensive rebounding and defensive rebounding was absolutely atrocious. Like, it was absolutely atrocious on Saturday. And they got some key rebounds, like CJ Gunn picked up a key one late. But at the end of the game, it doesn't matter because you lost. And it was like the bigger picture, especially right out of the gate. Everybody's expecting, Providence is going to be slow. They just sat on a tarmac for 10 hours in the last 24 hours because of flight trouble. Providence was the team that punched first. I'm sorry, but like they were the team that punched first, and DePaul was the one who had to react. And like that's the frustrating thing about it too. Like they had opportunities to steal this game, and then they just didn't.
No, I mean, I think we can kind of sum it up like this. And, I think Holtmann kind of said it best in his press conference. He said, he was like, players miss shots. They're human. That can happen. There's only so much you can learn from that. I noticed when he said this, his face got a lot more serious. His eyes got a bit wider. He said, but the one thing I hope they learned, better get those rebounds. Because I think, you haven't completed your rewatch yet, but I know this is going to stick with you for a while. It will with me. That last rebound when Jason Edwards was 78% free throw shooter, gets fouled on a 1-and-1, after Layden misses his first pair of free throws. So at that point, it's still 69-68. With about 8 seconds left, DePaul has a chance to make a play. They tip around a defensive rebound, but then goes back to Ryan Mila. He gets fouled again. He makes both free throws. Then you're down 71-68 with about 4 seconds left. If they would have secured that defensive rebound, Providence would have gotten, like I said, 78% free throw shooter, misses his 1-on-1 attempt. You would get that rebound. You would have gotten fouled, had a chance to put yourself up 1, potentially, because who knows with how the night was going, how that would have gone. You were 12-22 at that point. Who knows how that would have gone. But, there was even plays down the stretch you made. You just didn't make them. Like you said, I think that's the best way to sum up the night is, there were plays you could have made that just didn't make. Nick, let's transition, I think, to a game where we saw a lot more plays made that did result in some favorable results here. DePaul women got their 4th Big East win tonight, 76-67 over Xavier. A team that has losses to Northern Colorado, UIC, Bradley, decisive losses to Princeton and Michigan State, a 67-point loss to UConn, a 35-point loss to Marquette, a 30-point loss to Villanova, a Seton Hall road loss that's a lot more skewed than the box score makes it look, has 4 wins in the Big East. And they are no longer in last place. They're in 10th as a result of their efforts tonight. And 7 players had 8 points or more. Like, it was one of the more balanced efforts I've seen. And obviously the headline that came out of that one was Kate Novick getting to 1,000 points, and you wrote about it. So what were your big takeaways from this game?
Yeah, it was a game that DePaul should have won on paper, and they did win on paper. Like, it was Kate Novick was sensational. I mean, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, 35 minutes. Like, she was just, like, honestly, like, DePaul on the women's side just had a bad season. Like, it just is what it is. Like, this is about as hard of a reset as you can possibly have in college basketball, where nothing works. You're getting blown out of games. But over the last couple weeks, they've started playing much better basketball. Where would this team be without Kate Novick? Like, just where would they be? Because I don't know if they'd win a game. Because that's just how good Kate Novick has been. And of course, that was a little tongue in cheek because they still would have beat up on a couple of opponents in the non-conference. But not much more
without Kate Novick.
Yeah, like you can just point to the games where you look at it and it's like Kate Novick makes an impact. She's only missed 1 game, and that was the game at UIC. That was the only game she's missed. She's played in the other 28 or 27 or whatever the math got to be. Like, she has just been incredible. And I wrote about it at Blue Demon Media Network's Substack, bdmn.substack.com. You can go and check it out. It'll be right there, or you could go to any of my social medias. The post is there. Kate Novick did one thing that a lot of people had kind of aspired to do. You kind of go from being a good player to an elite player by amassing 1,000 career points. She did it in just her 82nd game. In college basketball, she played 60 games at not 60 games. I'm sorry, 54 games at Morehead State, and then she transferred to DePaul. But Andy, what was really impressive about Kate Novick, and you and I have seen this going all the way back to October. Nobody wants DePaul to win more than Kate Novick. Kate Novick is the women's Brandon Macklin. Like, she's just a better skilled Brandon Macklin for those who haven't followed the women's team as closely. Like, she did, like, again, she got a triple-double. Didn't even really know she had a triple-double. Scored 1,000 points in her career. Didn't even really know. And honestly, I don't even really know if she cared. Like, she is all about just one thing. She wants to win. And I think that is probably the most impressive thing about Novick, is that she puts up all of these crazy stat lines, and she had this spin move into a Euro step and high off the glass with the left hand, which I'm still not really sure how that happened. Like, I'm still kind of in awe about it, some 6 hours later. But, like, she has just been by far one of the better players in the Big East this year. And that is just a fact. And she has been overly impressive. And the only thing she cares about is how her teammates do and if they win. Those are the only 2 things she cares about.
No, I would agree. And in that same vein, somebody who cares a lot about DePaul winning, and you can kind of see even more with her presence lately, is the other player who impressed me and who we've kind of talked about as we talk about the women, in spurts here, is Michelle Ojo. Just continued to impress me today. 15 points, 7 boards, 5 of 8 from the floor. Made her first collegiate three-pointer. She would previously attempted 4 prior to this game. She didn't attempt a single one in her first year at George Washington or her 3 years at Delaware. Taken 5 at DePaul and, makes one today. Just I got kind of a nice little milestone for her on the way to a big one as well. And I just, the leadership that Michelle and Kate have shown, especially down the stretch, for a lot of the new players like Natalia Nelson, Devin Hegman, Elena West, who all had big games for DePaul today. Even Ajanique Mayo, who coming off the bench drilled 2 big threes. Felt like every time Ajanique hit a shot today, it was in a crucial spot. It's just been good to see this team really come together, and the chemistry they're playing with is I think at an all-time high, where even compared to the Creighton game a few weeks ago, they know where everybody is on the floor. Like, they know wherever teammates are. They're making the right passes. The ball movement's great. 17 assists on 27 made field goals. So you're making the right passes, getting good opportunities. And even though the efficiency hasn't totally been there, the defensive intensity has been incredible. Like, you had, in this game, 13 steals. 2 players had 3 or more steals. Hegman had 3, including an interception of a Xavier inbounds pass that pretty much sealed the game at the end when you were already up 7 with about 30 seconds to go. Novik, obviously, you mentioned, had 4. And, it was funny in the press conference. I don't know if you caught this. Novik was asked about her 4 steals, and her answer was kind of like, well, I hadn't done it in a while, so I figured, why not today? It's just the answer she gives sometimes. Yeah. She's just one of the most machine-like players I've covered, in the sense that she's just kind of like, if I want to go do something, I'm going to go do it. And she doesn't really, make it look as impressive as it is in the box score. But like, I didn't even know she had 4 steals until the end, because she just makes it look so effortless. She just kind of like, gets her hand in there and gets the ball, or, on the glass, she's just always in the right spot. Doesn't matter if it's offensive, defensive. She's coming from halfway. If she's coming from the free throw line to get the board, she's always in the right spot. Or if she's right there, she's making the right box out. Like, she's just one of those players who was always in the right spot at the right time. 4 of 4 at the free throw line. She's had games where she's gone 7 of 7, 8 of 8. One of the most accurate free throw shooters on a team that, you and I both know doesn't have a whole lot of them. And it's just been really fun to cover, her growth as a Blue Demon, as she's figured out Jill Pizzotti's, run and gun, Bruno Ball defense system. And, they have senior night against Butler and road Georgetown, but they're in 10th right now, could move into 9th. Anything else you kind of want to add from this game?
No, it's just a really impressive win, as they got one more home game before their season wraps up. Their Big East season finishes a week earlier than the men's season. So Saturday at Georgetown, or no, I believe it's Sunday. I think it's March 1st. At Georgetown will be their final game, and then they will travel out east to Connecticut and play the Big East tournament at Mohegan Sun, where they allowed Xavier in the, I believe it's 6-10, or 6-10 game for the upset. Either way, they were not supposed to lose the first game, and they lost to Xavier. The first game was a quick 1-2 trip to stores. But Andy, like, one thing I do want to talk about is, like, this is very much a hard reset for DePaul. And I think, like, I think your priority number 1, if you're Jill Pizzotti, is how do you keep Kate Novik? I think that is a priority numero uno, because again, without keeping Kate Novik, now you have to go find another Kate Novik. And I don't know.
There's not another one.
Right. And like, I don't know how easy it is. And like, this is a thing. This is a program that is going to take probably 4 years. Pizzotti's going to be given a lot of latitude here to work with, just to try to build it up. Because again, NIL resources are not where other teams are in the Big East. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. And I think trying to be able to keep a player like Kate Novik, she doesn't fit your timeline the best, but she is a reason why people should go to DePaul women's games next year if she does decide to come back. And that's really all I have on that. Do you want to move into Creighton and Marquette?
There was actually one more thing I want to talk about. I was really impressed with Elena West today. Really impressed. Like one of her best games, I think, at DePaul. 8 points, 5 boards, 2 of them were offensive, 5 assists, 2 steals. She just made all the gritty plays today. Like there was one time she got an offensive board that she basically, I'm going to use an example here because I can't really even, I can't really use words. So the ball, let's say it was water bottle is the ball. I have it in my hand. She comes in, takes it away, except the ball isn't fully in her hands yet. Really bad explanation, but she basically just she kind of forced her hand in between a girl's arms and just took the ball from her. And it wasn't quite a steal because she didn't have full possession yet, but she just willed her way to that one, dribbles it out to the corner, makes a 3. Just the amount of plays she made, whether it was getting fouled today, going to the free throw line, or whether it was getting crucial boards or making big layups, she had a really nice reversal finish. Elena West made the kind of plays that show this team is starting to figure out how to win. Like they're not just, riding Kate Novick and Michelle Ojo's efforts. They're all coming together and they're figuring out, we've been here before. We know we're learning how to hold leads instead of blowing 10 to 15 point leads down a stretch of games and kind of, losing by 3 or 4 points. Like they're figuring out how to hold on to leads and make gritty plays. And I thought Elena was kind of just an extension of that today on the court.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think another building block piece, if you're Pizzotti, you want to try to hang on to in the coming years. But let's switch back over to the men's side as they will travel to Omaha, Nebraska, and take on the Creighton Blue Jays. And I think you would have to think that Creighton is not too happy with how the game in South Loop or Chinatown, depending on who you ask, wrapped up last
Chinatown,
week.
according to Blue Demon Degenerate.
Where do you want to start?
Let's start here.
We do it for the.
Let's start here. You've allowed in your last 3 games, you've allowed 2 teams to shoot 50% or better. You beat Creighton.
I haven't done it. What do you mean you? I didn't do it. Sorry.
The DePaul men's basketball team beat Creighton when they shot 51.9% from 3. There you are. I'm getting worried. 51.9% from 3 in the home game against DePaul. But DePaul had 46 paint points, their most since 2010. Greg McDermott's an excellent coach. There is no way DePaul gets 46 paint points in Omaha. And there is no way that Creighton does not also shoot a bunch from 3 because they know that the way you beat DePaul is to let it fly. And Creighton at home shoots it at about 30%, which Creighton shoots better on the road, but Creighton shoots better at home, but defends a 3 better on the road. So at home, Creighton has also allowed some major 3-point shooting variance. St. John's and UConn have both come in and shot greater than 50% from 3 in Omaha this year. Now, obviously, I just said Connecticut and St. John's, and those are 2 AP top 25 teams. The point there is, when Creighton's lost games in Omaha, the other team has shot well from 3. DePaul has not done that in the last 6 games, shooting 26.5% on average, like I said. This is going to be a game where making your open shots is going to be paramount because those paint points that were there for you last time, there's going to be doubles on NJ Benson. There's going to be a lot more of a concerted effort inside because Greg McDermott is too smart of a coach to allow the same thing to happen. This is going to be a game that I'm going to be watching with 3-point line on both sides. I think it's that simple for DePaul. If you make a good percentage of your threes and you defend the 3 with even a half decent closeout, because I'm going to be honest, part of the reason these teams are making them, it isn't because you're a second late to a closeout. How many practice shots did Providence take? How many practice shots did Seton Hall take? How many practice shots did Creighton take a couple weeks ago in the South Loop? Quite a few of them, because it isn't even that you're late for a closeout. You're doubling guys inside and somebody's open on the perimeter. That is how DePaul is getting outshot. It isn't just that you're half defending or like you're a second late to reach out. You aren't defending the 3 at all in some spots. And Creighton is actually a better shooting team on the road than they are at home. And they defend the 3 a lot better on the road than at home. So Creighton is due for some shooting variance performances against them at home. The question is, can you create one of them? And I think that's going to be paramount for DePaul in this game because, I'll say it again, you're not getting 46 paint points. NJ's been on a tear that includes that Creighton game, so we'll see if he can go for a 4th game of 19 plus and get close to a double-double again. But you're not going to be able to get Brandon Macklin going inside and doing everything he did. You're not going to have opportunities open for Layden and CJ to just, go inside and hit those, get nice dunks or get transition layups. They're going to be waiting for you inside. And it's a question of, can you hurt them from three to then open up your game plan a bit where they have to decide, do they want to defend with three or the paint? Because if they don't have to defend with three, they're going to defend the paint.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting spot for Creighton because they're coming off back-to-back road games in hostile environments in UConn and St. John's. They won in stores, and then they lost at the Garden. But this is their first home game since Valentine's Day, coming up on Wednesday. So almost 2 weeks without being able to play at home. And I think, Creighton, you want to get up for that. You've played you played the two best teams in conference play on the road back to back. And now you finally get to, get a little breather, catch your breath, and come home. And I think that this is an interesting game because I think that it's still a lot closer than people think. I still honestly, this is where NJ Benson, I need you to be a dude. I understand what you did against the Blue Jays last time, but at some point, you are their best player. You are DePaul's best player. Go take over the game. 2 weeks ago, and you're playing, Georgetown, or sorry, not Georgetown, Creighton for the second time in a matter of weeks, like you did Providence. But don't change your game plan because it worked so well the other day. So you want to try to throw a wrinkle in there. Don't try to overcomplicate it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at some point, allow your best player to be your best player. I think that's where DePaul, at this point, it's whatever they get from the perimeter is bonus, Andy. I'm not expecting them to go in there and shoot 41% from three. I'm just not. Honestly, if they shoot 30%, we'll consider it a win because this is not a jump shot shooting team. It's just not. It's a downhill style slashing team. That's what it is. That's why they've been able to get to the free throw line a lot more this year because they're just not taking jump shots this year. So I think this is a fascinating game on paper because, again, Creighton's got a good offense. They have a very okay defense. It's nothing. They're just very average. It's just a very okay team. But I think this is one of those things where it's DePaul really has this is probably the team, and feel free to tell me if I'm full of it, but this is probably the team that DePaul matches up the best with, and is probably most.
No, I would agree. I think the reason you're competitive with Seton Hall is because sans Bud Clark and occasionally AJ Staten McRae, there's not a whole lot of offense going on in South Orange, New Jersey. So that's why you're able to keep up with Seton Hall. I do think matchup-wise, Creighton is a team that, even though obviously when they shoot with three, DePaul struggles. Body for body, they match up well with. Creighton doesn't really have an assertive interior presence. Obviously, Owen Freeman's been dealing with some stuff all year. And, other guys like Jackson McAndrew, who I think was a big piece of his team in the front court, has been missing all year. But, this is a game where the other thing I'm looking for is, Fabian Flores remembered against Providence that he's 7'2". In 7 minutes, he got 6 points and grabbed 4 offensive rebounds. Obviously, did go 0-2 from the free throw line, but just one of those nights for the team as a whole. But if Fabian can come in and give you, 5 points, 3 boards in a 5-minute span, the other thing I think we got to watch for against Creighton, and I know McDermott's going to be a lot more intentional about them doing it, is they, in that game, we out rebounded Creighton 30-22. And we held Creighton to their lowest rebounding total of the year. Creighton's defensive rebounding percentage on KenPom is their offensive rebounding percentage is 27.6%, which is 279th in the country. DePaul's defensive rebounding percentage is 30.8%. So you're getting about 4% more rebounds defensively than Creighton is offensively. If you're able to take away Creighton's second chance points and their second chance opportunities, you're going to be able to do a lot more for yourself because they're going to lose one of the ways they draw for free throws because they don't get to the free throw line a whole lot. But if you watch a lot of their games, the way they get to the free throw line and go to mount is by getting fouled on those second chance opportunities. Like Austin Swartz, for example, that when he got that offensive board that then became the shot he got the N1 on when they beat Xavier, that was an example of him getting an offensive rebound and then became something. And that's one of the ways Creighton gets fouled is when they get those offensive opportunities, they're more intentional about driving inside so that they can get to the free throw line. And so I think if you can take away those opportunities for Creighton, that's going to be a major swing factor in this game. You did it in Chicago and overcame 52% from three. Can you do it again in Omaha with hopefully a bit less three-point accuracy? That's one thing I'm watching for.
What happens Wednesday night somewhere in the middle of America?
There's going to be a 40-minute basketball game played. I'm going to say...
Big if true.
Oh, I would love it to only be 40 instead of an overtime game. DePaul hasn't played one this year.
Which is kind of surprising, but whatever.
I think Xavier could have been more on the road, but that's for another day. I'm going to say... You know what? Give me DePaul by 3. That's all I got.
I will be on the other side. I think the Blue Jays by 2. I think it's still a one-possession game. But I don't know if you remember much last year. DePaul played Creighton in Omaha about the same time last year as a 10-point game. Ken Pom has this as a 7-point win for Creighton. I think DePaul's defense goes up. I think they'll really be able to get after it over the next couple of days because I think they'll be able to use it as motivation. I just think I'm going to give to the home team here. Let's quickly talk about Sunday's matchup. The only game in the Big East on Sunday that will take place in the Cheesehead State, more specifically inside Pfizer Forum, as DePaul will get on a bus and they will take on Marquette. And one thing that's also interesting is Creighton is the last true road trip that DePaul will play before heading out to the Big East tournament, because you have away at Creighton, technically away at Marquette, but you're getting on a bus, and then back-to-back home games with Nova and Butler to round out the home slate. But I think we got to start with Marquette. Andy, Nigel James, Big East freshman of the year.
100%. I mean, that move, I hope everybody's seeing it, but if not, there's no Marquette show, so I might even link it in the description. We'll see. That Michael Jordan move that he made through Zuby Ejiofor and Bryce Hopkins, I think is just a microcosm of what he's been. Nigel James, the Big East freshman of the year, I mean, in my opinion, obviously, Matt Janis will tell you it's Caden Lewis, and Mark Zanetto will tell you on the hoops cap that it's Braylon Mullen, so I think he's a distant third, even to a Caden and Nigel James. I think it's Nigel James. If Marquette's able to retain Nigel and Royce Parham, who I want to talk about here before we move on, I think they're going to be a single-digit seed next year in the tournament. I mean, those two are guys you can build around. And for a year, it's been kind of a lost season just in terms of where Marquette wanted to be, where everybody had them picked. Top 4 in the Big East. Matt Norlander in the preseason, who I respect from CBS Sports, had them top 25 because people just kind of thought, it would work with Shaka. It hasn't to the level people thought, but he's already admitted, I'm going to, if only to save his job, he's going to go into the portal and going to get some guys. If you can build the right pieces around Royce Parham and Nigel James, you're going to be in business next year and quickly. But the guy I want to zero in on this one, because I think the matchup that decides this game is NJ Benson versus Royce Parham. Because in the early part of the season, Royce was kind of playing behind Ben Gold and some other guys inside. I believe Caden Hamilton was another guy who was starting over Royce. I have the positions mixed up, might not be Caden. But Royce Parham, in the 8 games since he came to Wintrust Arena and played DePaul, here's his averages. 17.9 points a game, 5.9 rebounds a game, 1.8 blocks a game, 38% from 3, 74% from 2, 70% of the free throw line. He has quietly been one of the 15 or so best players, maybe even 10 best players in the Big East the past month or so. Royce Parham is going to be a handful for NJ Benson because he has joined the list of players like Zuby and Terrace Reed and Oswin, who are physical presences. It took him a while, but the sophomore leap started to come to fruition here for Royce Parham. And you have a guy who, with relative accuracy, is hitting big three-pointers for Marquette, keeping them in games. NJ, he's taken a few threes. He's not a prolific shooter. Royce Parham, as a true stretch 5 for Marquette, is going to be the big difference in this game if Marquette wins it. So DePaul is going to have to figure out a way to stop him because he's one of the guys who is a true stretch five. He can hurt you from the perimeter. He can hurt you inside. He's accurate from all places. 70% from the free throw line and 74% from two. Both very good marks. So how DePaul handles Royce Parham for me is paramount. You can out-rebound them if you want to. You can outshoot them if you want to. You can defend with three if you want to. The bottom line is Nigel James is going to get his. We know that. How you limit Royce Parham and the complementary pieces, that's going to be the difference in this game. The matchup that decides it, in my opinion, is NJ versus Royce. End of story.
Yeah, and I mean, Marquette, the last time these two teams played, keep in mind, like, this was a game DePaul pretty much had put away in the first 30 minutes, and then in the last 10 minutes, Marquette kind of started to make a run there. At the end, it was a 5-point game. Parham had 14. Marquette as a team shot 41% from three. Nigel James was incredible. He had 18. Like, this is a game where CJ Gunn and NJ Benson pretty much carried. CJ had 31, NJ had 17. Like, this is a game where it is a very interesting spot because if you are DePaul, like, DePaul, if I remember correctly, played a lot of zone against Marquette just because of the style that they kind of play. They're comparable to Xavier, right? A team that's going to take a lot of threes. So the best way to kind of mitigate that is to play a little zone. And that's what DePaul really did. And Marquette pretty much abused them. After the first 10 minutes, it was like almost like 30-17. Like, DePaul really had to claw all the way back because for whatever reason, for the Golden Eagles of Marquette, the hoops are a little bit bigger when they play at Wintrust. I can't really explain it. But it just really happens to be like that. But I think, like, if you're DePaul, you have to find a way to try to match Marquette the best you can. You can't have empty possessions. I thought, honestly, in terms of like ball handling, Andy, like, I thought the Providence game was a relatively clean game. For DePaul, not a lot of. Yeah, like, that was a relatively clean game. Again, there's still a couple you're going to want back, like every team does. You're never going to have a game in the modern college basketball with zero turnovers. But I think, like, if you're DePaul, like, you need to be able to limit their threes. And Marquette pretty much abused the zone that DePaul, because they kind of ran like a 2-3 matchup zone, and then they weren't matching up, and then Marquette was just able to just drill triple after triple. And that was the issue. But, like, what's even funnier is they shot 38% from the line. Like, they were 5 of 13 from the line. Like, this Marquette team, as I kind of scroll and look at it, like, this is not a team I don't think that gets to the line quite a bit. Just because if it's it's like what I said earlier, this is a jump shot shooting team for the most part. So they are not going to get to the line a whole lot. So, like, if you're DePaul, you need to be able to find a way to not get them to the line, but you also just have to simply close out better. Like, that's how this game comes down to. You just need to be able to close out defensively.
100%. And one thing that's going to be key, too, for DePaul is going to be ball movement, because Marquette is bottom 25 in the country in terms of assist rate allowed. They allow you to assist on 60% of your made baskets, and DePaul assists on the season on 61% of their shots. So if they're able to move the ball and get the right possession, they get the right shots available and actually make those shots, because the opportunity is going to be there for ball movement. It's a question of, can you capitalize? One other thing I'm going to be watching in this game real quick is Marquette's average possession length is 15.4 seconds. DePaul's average possession length is 18.5 seconds. It's a roundabout way of saying Marquette likes to play fast. And obviously they've got guys like Nigel James and Chase Ross that can get out and run. It's going to be important for DePaul not to get sped up in this game, because how Marquette has won games in the Big East, when they're not stealing the ball from you, they're not scoring at the rate they usually do. Because Chase Ross and Nigel James, two of the best on-ball defenders in the conference that don't get enough attention because of the team standing. When they are stealing the ball from you at a high rate, their second chance points, they convert in a very high rate, and their points off turnovers, they convert at a high rate, because a lot of those steals become transition layups or dunks. And Nigel James, believe it or not, at 6'1", has a pretty impressive dunk. So if you are allowing the ball to be stolen from you at a high rate, Marquette's going to be able to get out. And at their place, they've been tough to play. A lot of Marquette's wins have come at their place this year, same with DePaul, because they're just one of those teams that when their fan base is behind them, even despite the down year they're having, there's a lot of energy in that building because it's an NBA arena. So you can get about 17,000 people in there, even when you're not having the best year, because they just are so hungry for that team to be good and hungry for that team to kind of build itself into the future and have those young pieces show themselves. So when you're allowing them to make highlight plays and fire the crowd up, it's going to be that much tougher for DePaul to win. So the ball security is going to matter to me, and how you handle Royce Parham. That's what it comes down to. Nick, let's do predictions, I think.
Yeah, I go ahead and give me DePaul. Give me DePaul by 5 in this game. Similar results to the last time out. I just think that there's going to be a good sized DePaul contingent that travels up there. I don't think it'll be the full hostile environment that we've seen. Again, it's the last week of the season. Marquette's really not going anywhere as a program right now. They're kind of spinning their wheels. DePaul kind of hopefully has positive momentum going into this game. DePaul is sending 2 student buses. From what I'm told, like nearly 80 students are going to the game. So that's part of it. Like, this game comes down to DePaul being able to take the crowd out of the game early, but not only take them out of it, keep them out of it. Because I don't know if you remember last year, like last year's game, this is the game NJ Benson got hurt in last year, ahead of the Big East tournament, when he tore ligaments in his thumb. And we didn't really know if he was going to be able to come back for the Big East tournament. So like, this is a game where DePaul, I think it would be a great final test heading into the Garden, before you finish up with Nova and Butler at home. Give me DePaul by 5.
This is where you and I are going to differ in back-to-back games. I actually think I like DePaul's road matchup with Creighton a little bit better, just because Creighton's had such an on and off year where if they're not hitting threes, they're not doing anything. I think DePaul hopefully would learn from their past 6 games. I know Holtmann's probably been thinking about it. So as a roundabout way of saying, give me Marquette by 4 in this game. I think this is, Marquette is a tough place to play, always has been. And I actually like the matchup for us against Creighton a lot better, because Creighton has, without Jackson McAndrew and with, guys like Austin Swartz and Nick Graves and Josh Sticks kind of in and out of the lineup throughout the year, it's been kind of hard for them to find a rhythm. But Marquette, with the emergence of Royce Parham, like I outlined, and with Nigel James ascending to Big East Freshman of the Year levels, and frankly, I think he's got the award locked up right now. And if not for team standing, which I think shouldn't matter for it, it wouldn't be a debate. I think the emergence of those two as the future of Marquette and kind of asserting themselves, I just think even with NJ playing well, it's going to be tough for us to contain or for DePaul to contain both of those guys. And so for that reason, Marquette by 4. I hate to say it, Marquette by 4.
And all right, it's fine. Well, we'll figure out. One of us will be right and one of us will be wrong in each game. So finally have a little bit different predictions. We thank you for listening to this very long, almost 70-minute episode.
Hold on, let's make it longer. I want to make it longer for a moment. There's one more thing I want to talk about for like 2 minutes. Nick, we talked about this before the episode. Let me run ISO for a second here. So, Rod Strickland talked to us, or he talked to me for about 5 minutes, and I lost Nick again. I bored him to death. So I'll do this myself.
You wanted to
go Rod, hello. So Rod Strickland, when I talked to him for a few moments pregame before St. John's game, told me there was a point where he wasn't sure if he was ever going to have his jersey retired because, the previous administration hadn't, gotten it done when they could have. And Dwayne obviously had other things to worry about. But, it's been a good year for Rod. He's had his jersey retired, but something that DePaul fans may not know is that he also just won the regular season at Long Island for the first time as a team since 2012. He is in his 4th year coaching the Long Island University Sharks, which used to be Long Island Brooklyn, Long Island Post, Division I and Division II school, respectively. They combined to form the Long Island Sharks in the 2019-20 season. And the D1 and D2 arms of that school both have not won a regular season conference championship since 2012. Strickland's team is in command of the NEC, and I've seen them in person. They are a deep squad, and a squad relative to that level that has a lot of talent. You've got Jamal Fuller and Malachi Davis, who both came back last year, and has a Greg Gordon and Jomo Goings, who have been key pieces for them. And just obviously this is a DePaul podcast, but just wanted to shout out Rod Strickland and the efforts his team has made, because Rod just got his jersey retired and he came back to Wintrust to be honored while he was in the middle of coaching his team. When LIU played Chicago State, I went down to see them. They won 74-55. And Chicago State, even though obviously it is typically one of the lowest resourced and one of the, lowest performing teams in D1, they've got a press that, they gave DePaul some fits, gave St. Louis some fits, given high major teams some fits. And LIU was able to make mincemeat of it, get whatever they wanted. And this is a team that in the non-conference took Mississippi State to the brink, lost to them by 4. They had a halftime lead over Georgia, who's kind of a bubble team right now. Rod Strickland's team has been really impressive. And the roster he's put together in year 4 there, really deep, really physical. And for guys like Malachi Davis to pull themselves out of a transfer portal and come back to Long Island and just be able to see that, see their efforts get rewarded, coming back to a school that took a chance on them. I just think, it's admirable what Strickland's done. And I just wanted to give some shine to it because LIU just won its first conference title in 14 years. Got to win the conference tournament to get to the NCAA tournament, obviously. And the NEC, like last year, St. Francis won it instead of Central Connecticut State. So, anything can happen in Champ Week. But Long Island in the regular season has been dominant. And we'll see in a couple of weeks if Rod Strickland can go from, having his jersey retired 1 month to coaching NCAA tournament next month. So, Nick, I appreciate you giving me a couple minutes here.
Absolutely. I will always stay in my own lane and give you a little room to ISO. We thank you. If you made it this far, why? Just why? But
because they're
listening.
Sick like us.
This is anarchy? No, just college basketball. He's the great Andy Thompson. I'm Nick Pell. We thank you for listening to this episode of the DePaud. We'll be back next week breaking down whatever the hell we just talked about today. So long, everybody.
So long.